Hey guys, welcome to linguamarina and welcome to the TOEFL study plan. If you have 4 weeks until your TOEFL test, watch this video carefully because these 4 weeks can change the whole trajectory. You have to be wise about them. You have to do things that I'm going to talk about in this video to make sure you feel great during the exam, to make sure you're confident during the exam, because all of this is really important for you to pass the TOEFL test and score whatever you need to score. Now, your situation is better than mine because when I found out that I had to take TOEFL, I also found out that I had to take GMAT. And the GMAT test is much more complicated than TOEFL. So my study plan looked like this. Get ready for GMAT, and if you have some time left, get ready for TOEFL. So I only had 10 days to prepare for the TOEFL test, but the good news is, even if you only have 2 weeks, if you only have 1 week, this video is still going to be very useful for you. Now let's talk about the plan that worked for me, worked for the students who watched this channel, and worked for the students who took a TOEFL course. Week number 1. You have 6 items on the list. Item number 1, get acquainted with the test. Make sure you know that it has 4 parts, that they're gonna check your reading, writing, listening, and speaking skills, that there are different types of questions in every section, that there are several types of essays that you're gonna write, that there are several things that you should pay attention to when you're doing the listening section. So this is your chance to make sure that you understand what the TOEFL test looks like. Task number 2, and this is super important. Get acquainted with the strategies that would help you answer questions in the TOEFL test. The thing is, there are strategies for every section. For example, the reading section includes 3-4 passages with 10 questions each. And you have 54 to 72 minutes, depending on how lucky you are, depending on how many questions you got, to answer all of them. And there are different types of questions: purpose, reference, vocabulary, and so on. And there are different strategies for each question. For example, to answer rhetorical purpose questions, you read the question first, you don't really look at the answers, you go and find the paragraph in the reading section, you start looking for the keyword that's in the question, then you read 1 or 2 sentences that come before the sentence with that keyword, and those sentences would normally contain the answer. The thing is, the TOEFL test is like maths. You need to know the strategies. You need to know how to answer each type of question, because sometimes the texts are so complicated and you just get lost. Like for me, those strategies were game changers. My English was pretty good at the time I took the TOEFL test, and I was able to score 117 out of 120. But what I think is that without those strategies, my grade could have been 100 or even 90, because this is how much knowing those strategies affects your performance. Task number 3. Find someone who's gonna give you feedback. Now, getting ready for the TOEFL test by watching videos on YouTube is a really good strategy, and I've made over 10 videos about this test myself. However, the problem is, with the videos, you're not getting any feedback. For example, if you're doing your speaking section, there's no one to rate your answer. Or if you're writing an essay, there is no one to rate your essay. When I was preparing for my TOEFL test, I actually asked my American friend to look over my essays, and he found some mistakes, but because he wasn't trained to check TOEFL essays, he couldn't give me feedback regarding structure, regarding usage of more advanced vocabulary. And this is why I would recommend finding a teacher who specializes in the TOEFL test. At LinguaTrip, we have a TOEFL course where Anastasia, a professional English language teacher who actually scored 119 on the test, she can provide feedback on all of your tasks. She has been preparing students for this exam for over 10 years, so she knows nearly everything about TOEFL. This course has 30 video lessons that are dedicated to each section: reading, listening, writing, and speaking. And in those videos, we share exam hacks, we share strategies, We give you templates and provide you with different approaches to dealing with each exam task. So if you want personal feedback on your speaking and writing section, please make sure to select the Guru package, where Anastasia is going to provide personal feedback. And don't forget to use the promo code linguamarina to get a special discount. The link is down in the description box. Task number 4 is for you to take a practice test. I recommend you take it in one sitting, just like on your TOEFL test day, just because the exam lasts for 3 hours with a short break between the listening and the speaking sections. And things get stressful. You need to make sure you had enough to eat, you use the restroom, like all of that stuff, but also you need to learn how to stay focused for 3 hours straight. And again, I am glad the reading section comes first, because this is where you have to be as sharp as possible if you can regulate this. But it is just so hard. You need to be really focused on your reading section, like pay attention to every single word, because it's super intense. It gets easier with listening, but it's still kind of intense. And then I think writing is more about your creativity and being attentive versus, paying attention to every single thing that's going on. It's more relaxing. So I'm actually glad that the test flows the way it flows. It starts with the reading section, then goes on to the listening section, then short break, then speaking and writing, and then you're done. Number 5, analyze your weaknesses and strengths. After you take your practice test, and by the way, you can take it on the website ets.org. This is the official organization behind the TOEFL test. And what they're gonna do, they're actually gonna show you all of the questions that you got right or wrong. So you would actually get your points for the reading and for the listening sections, and the maximum that you can get on those sections is 30. So you will see whether it's like 20 out of 30 or 15 out of 30. Unfortunately, if you don't have a teacher or if you're not enrolled in the course, there won't be any feedback on your writing and speaking sections, but at least you will be able to practice doing all of them in one sitting. Now, after the practice test, I want you to analyze your feelings. What was the most difficult thing? If you're striving for 100 out of 120 on your TOEFL test, then you would need to score at least 25 points on each section, right? What if you scored 15 out of 30 on your reading section? This is where you draw conclusions about what was the most difficult thing for you. And then you build the whole preparation process around focusing on the most difficult part first. So if reading was the most difficult part, then you start every day, every class with the reading part. And then you move on to the sections that were easier for you. And this is basically task number 6. Start focusing on your weaknesses. If your weakness is the reading section, then do it over and over again. Find more practice tests, find more exercises, just do them over and over again. Now, week 2 is all about practicing and working on your weaknesses. Task number 1, dedicate 1 day to each section and start with your weakness. Take at least 2 practice tests for that specific section. For reading and listening, review the wrong answers and practice the types of questions where you made mistakes. For speaking and writing, pay attention to how much extra help you need with grammar and vocabulary. For example, if you think about a word during your writing section and you're like, I really want to use this word, but I forgot its spelling and I actually need to use my dictionary. Now, this is what you pay attention to, because you can't use a dictionary during your TOEFL test. You rely on your memory. And so you do this every day. Monday, 2 reading sections. Tuesday, 2 listening sections. Wednesday, 2 speaking sections. Thursday, 2 writing sections. Friday, 2 reading sections, and I will still work on the weekend so that you have more practice. When I was preparing for my TOEFL, those 10 days, oh my God, they were so intense. I think I spent maybe 4 to 5 hours each day just working on my TOEFL test. During this week, you would also need to start working on your vocabulary. My philosophy here is that you won't be able to learn English in a month, right? You just can't. So TOEFL will reflect your current knowledge of English. But what I also want you to do is to brush up some idioms and vocabulary that you could potentially use in your writing section. Just because when they check that section, they specifically look for more advanced vocabulary. I was never able to score 30 out of 30 on my writing section just because I'm more on the careful side. I only try to use words that I'm 150% sure of. Like, I know their meaning, I know how to spell them, and if something sounds a bit unfamiliar to me, I wouldn't just use it. You can just Google like top 100 words for TOEFL writing or TOEFL speaking. Select 10 words every day. Those could be words and phrases that you know already. It's just for you to brush them up and make sure that you use some of them in your writing section. We actually asked a couple of native speakers to take the TOEFL test, and I don't know anyone who scored 30 out of 30 on writing. So our teacher, who's a native speaker, scored 29 out of 30. This is how tricky it is. Like for me, reading, listening, and speaking, they're like maths. Writing is a little bit more creative, so it's just really hard for a student to get 30 out of 30. But still possible. People do that. Then the next task is for you to create your templates and to learn them, to memorize them, so that you can use them during your test. And there are templates for each question in the speaking section, and there are templates for the essays in the writing section. And task number 10 in our overall list of tasks is to again review your wrong answers. Figure out why you got it wrong and what you could do to avoid answering those types of questions incorrectly in the future. Week 3, TOEFL is coming. So this week it's all about practice, practice, and practice. One day, one section. And this is where you also start timing yourself. You only have 18 minutes to complete every passage in the reading section. So 18 minutes, no more, no less. And I say no less because if you do everything in 15 minutes, then go back and check your answers. That strategy saved me on my TOEFL test because when I went back, I realized I actually answered one question incorrectly and I changed my answer, and this is what got me to 30 out of 30 on the reading section. So timing yourself is what you're focusing on during your 3rd week of TOEFL prep. And again, you focus on your weaknesses and more vocabulary, 10 words and phrases each day. Try to make sentences with them, try to select your favorite words and phrases, and make sure that you actually use them in your writing and in your speaking sections. And week number 4, I actually recommend you go to the place where you're gonna take your TOEFL just to figure out the whole transportation situation, how busy it gets with the traffic, how long it takes you to get there, what's the parking situation, all of that. Now this week you stop learning the new vocabulary, you just review what you've learned because you don't want to learn any new words that you don't have time to practice because they can actually distract you during your TOEFL test. Take a couple of full practice tests in 2 sittings, so 1 sitting per test, just to mimic the whole experience. But don't do that a day before your actual test. The day before your actual test, you rest. You watch a movie in English. Kind of surround yourself with the atmosphere, because I also remember I took my TOEFL in Russia, so I was surrounded by the Russian language every single day, and I wanted to get into those English language vibes just before the test. So watched movies, I started speaking English to myself, just to switch on this English speaking mode in my head. Now I just want to repeat this. You need to rest the day before the test. Because if you're nervous, if you didn't sleep well, if you didn't eat well, this is going to affect you because this is a really high stress environment and you need to be as calm as possible because this is the only way you can focus. And again, you won't be able to learn English in 4 weeks. You won't be able to learn English in a week, but during 4 weeks, you're able to get acquainted with the test, get into the right mindset, relax, and also remember that this is not the end of your life. If you don't score what you need to score, you can take the test as many times as you want. Yes, it is not free, but life is not over if you didn't score whatever you needed. But I am pretty sure you're gonna do well on the first attempt. Fingers crossed for you guys. All of the resources that I mentioned are gonna be linked down below in the description box. Thank you so much for watching this video up to the very end. When you take the test and get your score, please come back to this video and share it in the comment section. I think it will be great and very inspiring for other students to look at your experience and be like, oh, she just scored 100. You know, seeing people accomplish amazing things makes me so inspired and so grateful for the opportunity of being able to talk to you here, guys. Thank you so much, and see you soon in the next videos. Fingers crossed. Wishing you 120 out of 120 on TOEFL.